Bully. I'm the storyteller for TableGoth.
And I'm Mandy.
She's here too. We are here to show you how to create a character for Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition. And we're here to show you that damn near anyone can do this. So let's get started. For this game, it's important to remember that you're making a character for a story rather than making a build for a game like in some other tabletops. It's about narrative cooperation more so than managing encounters and your abilities. So for this, you want to sort of have backstory over everything. It's not really optional in this game. So a good backstory is going to do a few things. You mostly want it to determine the future your character is going throughout the chronicle. Why'd you look at me like that?
I'm like listening to the thing.
I said something wrong.
Oh, God.
So you want to define what they have to gain, what they have to lose, and the consequences of each. And what I like to do is to create a human first. In most traditional games, you're not going to be playing a kindred who has been a kindred for a particularly long time. So their mortal life should inform a lot of what you put on your character sheet. So you should know your mortal life well, but you should still have your general idea of what clan you want and abilities and all that. But I still like to start with the human first and slowly sort of turn them into a vampire throughout the creation process. So let us get started with that. Give us a quick introduction about what sort of character we're going to be making today.
So I have a character that I have named Lane Peters. She comes from a military family. Her dad was in the military his whole life. Her mom was a teacher. She has an older brother, and he's also a teacher. She attended, for college, a military school to kind of further her career along the military path. She's a bit of a loner, but not unlikable. Very focused on her future, her career. Yeah, that's kind of just the basics
Okay.
of Lane.
So we have a lot of decisions that they already made in their mortal life that will sort of
Give
probably
them a
be
path.
upended once they get turned.
Yeah.
So it should be really interesting to build that past, but also have to figure out how to still make that work going forward as a vamp. Okay. So I like to start off with your ambition and your desire. If you know the goals your character has, it's a lot easier to make everything else sort of fit to work for that, or even some things that might work against that or make them more an interesting journey for you. Ambition is more of your long-term goal, something big you want to do. And desire is obviously something shorter term, something that will hopefully build into reaching that ambition. There are mechanical reasons to define these as well. You could get willpower back and stuff like that. Even though I don't really do that, you don't need more willpower. But it's still good to know just for moving forward with your character. So what would you say was it Elaine?
Lane.
Lane. What would you say Lane's overall ambition is? And this would be something, I know I say we're starting as a human, but this would sort of have to work within a vampire chronicle, obviously.
Yeah, so I mean, she wants to join law enforcement and more likely something pretty high up, like on the federal level. So those are pretty lofty goals. I mean, she has the ability to achieve those, but so yeah, that's something that would be complicated after being turned. But the main reason that she's doing that is to protect people that can't. She has a really good heart when it comes to her ambitions as far as law enforcement goes. So that's an interesting pull in human experiences, but also at a later point.
So what would her ambition be when she's turned? Because she wouldn't really be able to be in law enforcement anymore necessarily, but it's still that desire to protect or stabilize things on a larger scale maybe?
Yeah, I think even though she's not politically minded, which is a lot of kindred society, she still wants to keep those things stable. Just she might not agree with administrative choices in the government as a human. Her goal would still be to keep things safe and protect people.
So maybe in like game terms, in a Camarilla Chronicle, there's a sheriff. That's your main enforcer. Gangrel, by the lore, are anarchs in 5th edition, but you can make them whatever side you want, honestly. So maybe the ambition could be to become the top person for enforcement in her city. She's the law as far as arts. She's the guardian in a way of this city, for better or for worse. Okay. Would you say a desire would be something more short term leading up to that goal?
Context of that goal, but
I mean, it could be a separate desire too. It doesn't have to fit in nicely with the goal. She could have this separate desire that's like a personal thing she wants to accomplish that isn't tied to that too.
So, I mean, a lot of things will have to do with her training. So she has like the family background. She understands like the culture going into it. But especially women trying to go into law enforcement, they need to be good at everything. So something that I had kind of thought about was her like training in mixed martial arts. That would be something she would focus on pretty heavily. Like this side of culture that she would, it's different than law enforcement and it has a different group of people that she would be around. But her desire to really excel in that would be slightly removed from, her end goals, but also like, move alongside them.
So it works as a desire for self-improvement and desire to, well, not even self-improvement, although proving to other people that she's capable in the way that most people wouldn't assume she would be. Okay, I like that. Okay, so once you know what your character wants to accomplish, I like to fill in their touchstones and convictions, which is a system I really like in this version. That essentially you want to figure out tenets, things she really believes in, and some people that are connected to those. So usually they suggest like 2 or 3. We could just do one of each to make it easy. So what would be a conviction she has, and who's that touchstone connected to that?
I wrote down a couple of different ones. Her mom, who is a teacher, has been a teacher, for forever. She is very compassionate and generous, and soft in ways that, Lane wouldn't see in a lot of other parts of her life. And her mother really instilled in her to protect people that can't protect themselves, so protecting the innocent. And that had a big play in Lane's life. So I guess that's like...
Yeah, so it's common. I think it makes a very interesting aspect to have a mortal from your life still be a touchstone, still something that you have a reason to, even if they think you're dead, you could still have them as a touchstone. They're still important to you. There's still something to protect or look out for in some way. And then the ideal that comes from your mother is protecting the innocent.
Yeah.
And that could be very difficult to do in the vampire campaign, but that's a good thing too. You want your touchstone and your conviction to be something that actually comes into play, that will actually be tested, rather than something that's really easy to maintain.
Yeah. If you make it super easy or just very generic, then it lacks like depth that you want in your character, especially in like a very story-driven type of game. You don't want it to be like a flat ideal.
I think this game's all about consequences, so the more things that could have consequences that are tied to you, the more interesting it'll be, and the more it gives your storyteller to work with. And then also mechanically, your touchstones and convictions come into play with stains or frenzies. So if you do things that are against your touchstone, you might get a stain on your humanity because of it, where someone else with a completely different conviction wouldn't be affected by it. So it's good for building your character, but it also has mechanical applications as well. Next, we're going to do attributes and skills. This is actual like filling out the dots on our sheet and building them up mechanically wise. These will affect your roles and all of that good stuff, but also it should show who your character is as a person as well. In this game, you don't make a class and just sort of follow that trait. You make a person, you make a fleshed out character, then you decide what they're good at and how they're defined in game terms. So I like to do what's your best at, then worst, and then sort of fill out the middle. So we'll start with attributes. Start with what you are best at. So one of these is going to be at 4 dots.
I feel like intelligence and or composure would be pretty high up there. I think I'm going to go with intelligence, though, for 4.
Okay. So her best attribute is, even though she's a very physical character, you want her strongest thing to be her intelligence.
Well, the reason I'm saying that is because the strength, the like physical strength, is something she's working on, and it's
Okay, so
maybe not her best.
You don't want to
that's
come in
where
with a
her
character
focus
who's
is,
already
yeah.
just a complete bruiser.
Yeah.
It's something that she has room for improvement,
Yeah.
and you want to show that improvement going
Yeah.
forward. Yeah, that could be really interesting.
I mean, I still want her, to be very strong, but her mind got her through the university.
Sure, intelligence, and that could also come into play a little bit as resolve, just her
Yeah.
determination.
Yeah.
So I would expect that to be pretty high as well.
Yeah.
And now one of these is going to be at 1 dot. This,
Maybe manipulation. I don't see her being purposely manipulating.
yeah, I feel like she knows herself very well and what drives her and what works for her. And she probably doesn't understand other people's motivations as well. And it's it seems like she's trying to overcome other people's
Yeah.
ideals. So, but just through herself. She
Yeah.
doesn't really know how to change their view. She just knows how to overcome it herself. So yeah, that'd be interesting. Manipulation will be at 1. Going back to things you're good at. So 3 of these are going to be at 3 dots.
So can you talk about the difference between resolve and composure? So resolve is under
Don't make me do
mental.
that. So,
Mental, composure is under social, and those are things that I feel are about the same.
well, let me say off the top of my head. Well, this one's very easy and something I already knew. Composure, and you have to think where they fall under. So one's more social, one's more mental. Obviously, there's overlap, whatever. Composure is you keeping calm under pressure. You're cool-headed, your level-headedness in situations, social situations more particularly, that would otherwise sort of maybe set you off. Resolve is more of your focus, your attention on something. Where obviously they're related. Being level-headed helps you stay focused, but resolve is more. There's a task that you have to focus on. That's something that could be more just you focusing on. Where composure seems something that's more reactive, keeping your composure in outside outside forces working against you. Resolve could be just you and how good you are at focusing on something. But again, there's definitely overlap between the two. I could see her being probably very good at both, maybe. Resolve for sure, because she seems very
Yeah.
determined. Composure, I guess, would think about how well she does if
In
people are
social
able to
settings.
get under her skin, or if she is good at keeping that back.
Okay, so 3 and 3. 3 and 3 attributes.
Maybe. But also, if you wonder, you have all your physical things to think about as well.
Yeah. So I was thinking 3 in resolve, 3 in strength, 3 in dexterity, and then I can put 2 in the others.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then, that leaves the rest will have 2 dots. So we have a character who's very smart and very focused, driven. And also, a lot of that plays into her training, her physical training. So she has the strength, she has the speed. Her stamina is not the highest, which also makes sense as something she's trying to overcome, something she's trying to physically toughen up. Social definitely seems like her weakest. She's not the most charismatic, where she might believe in herself, but she's not good at maybe expressing that to other people. That's why she expresses it through physical training and whatnot. And then, obviously, she's not good at manipulating and maybe doesn't do the best at keeping her cool. So these also determine our willpower and our health. So our willpower is your composure plus your resolve. So she's going to have 5 willpower, which is not bad at all. That comes in handy a lot with controlling yourself during frenzies, and there's also social damage you can take as willpower damage. Okay, and then your health is your stamina plus 3. So you'll have 5 health. Also, not bad. And now we'll get into our skills. The book gives us 3 basic payouts essentially when it comes to skills. There's a balanced, there's specialist, balance and jack of all trades. That determines sort of how many dots you have to work with as far as filling her out. They also have a really interesting thing where if your job plays a big part, you could take a job package like law enforcement that gives you these skills and whatnot. They have a bunch of different options, but just to keep it easy and to give you the most freedom to work with, let's just pick one of the three as specialist, balance, jack of all trades. What do you think she would be?
I'm a little torn on that because, I have this idea of her like going to like a military college, which really, really focuses on being very well-rounded languages, math and social studies and, physical strength. So like with that as being her background, I feel like balance would be, a good option. But then, since then she's really been focused on her physicality. So I'm a little torn on that.
Yeah, it could be. I can see the military, while they teach you a lot, it's all through the lens of how to use that in a military setting.
Yeah.
So some of those might sort of combine or fall into similar things, where she has a little, she does, I get what you're saying. There's a little bit of like jack of all trades, but I feel like everything's been pushed through this one, funneled through.
Like a view.
Yeah.
So maybe more of a specialist.
Maybe.
All right. We'll deal with that.
Okay, so specialist is going to give us 1 skill at 4, 3 skills at 3, 3 skills at 2, and 3 skills at 1. So you don't have a ton of skills, but what you do have, you're quite good at.
2 skills at 1.
So we'll start with your 1, your 4 dot. And 4 dots in something is very, very good in this. Obviously, 5 is the max, so if you're 5, you're like world class at your thing. 4 is your expert level. But let's pick the one skill that she is best at with 4 dots, something she's really world class at.
I feel like I can't say brawl yet because that is something that she's, while very good at, she's still working on it. It's still something, maybe athletics, because in general she's more athletic.
Sure. So she has the base. She's overall a high level athlete. As far as picking up the training and the skills, that still has a little bit more work. But 3 skills and something still very good.
Yeah.
Okay, so athletics will be 4 dots. And then this one is a little harder to go like top than bottom because you're going to have a lot that you just don't have dots in. So you have a lot of things you're worst at. So we could just keep going down the line of what you think she's next best at is 3 skills that she'll have 3 dots in.
3 skills she'll have 3 dots in? Or 2?
3.
Maybe investigation. Brawl I could do there. I feel comfortable with doing brawl at 3.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Investigation.
So where's the investigation come from?
Well, her goal is to be in like federal law enforcement.
Yeah.
So, with her intelligence and that like being the plan, that's something she's already decent at.
Sure. And it's interesting too because she's not the best at social, so she's really good at like just looking at the facts, looking at the clues, looking at what actually happened, and putting the big piece together rather than like interrogating people and whatnot.
Right.
And yeah, that with her high intelligence should be a very good investigator. Yeah.
Insight can be interesting as far as like she can pick up kind of what's going on, but maybe not so much socially because we kept.
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference between being able to like kind of get a read on someone than be able to actually do anything about it. So maybe she knows when she's being underestimated or when someone has ulterior motives. She just doesn't have the social skills herself to
manipulate.
Yeah, to change that. So you can still have low social but high insight, I think.
But then I think either intimidation or streetwise would be more on the nose with her.
Yeah, streetwise could be where she like knows the books of like how the criminals work and stuff, but it doesn't sound like she has like actual experience with it.
Yeah.
And intimidation, that could be a big thing for her.
Yeah, I think I think that's probably best in this situation.
Yeah, when you can't talk people into things, she just scares them into it. And then what do we have?
2 categories.
3 skills at 2.
3 skills.
You did a terrible job of writing this down.
So confused. 3 skills at 2. Okay.
So then some of the other ones you're wrestling with, like the streetwise, like the whatever you said, I already forgot. Those could
Insight,
be 2 done.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I can do streetwise. Maybe awareness.
Yeah, just be able to. It's your perception, kind of. That's always good to
I
have.
feel like that's better than insight, because just because she noticed things doesn't mean she always like puts the social pieces together. Drive, I think. She's pretty determined.
Yeah, just some practical.
Yeah.
No, that's physically driving a car.
Oh, what the heck? Drive. What is that?
Drive is for your resolve.
Of course I can drive.
Yeah, so actually, that's a good point. So skills that you don't have dots in, that are things most everyone can do, in game terms you can still do it. You don't need dots and drive to operate a car. You're just not going to be very, very good at controlling it in like a chase or something. Yeah. You don't need dots in technology to use a computer, just maybe to do more advanced programming or hacking and stuff.
I could do stealth as my 3rd one.
Sure. And then we have 3 skills at 1, things you've dabbled in.
Go with leadership at 1, because she isn't super great with people, but she does know a lot, and so sometimes that can sway.
And I feel like her personality definitely works in as far as military leadership goes, law enforcement leadership, her resolve, her physicality, things like that are seen as good qualities in a leader. Where in some circles that might not matter, for hers it would.
You know, can I correct something? I feel like I should have done stuff in firearms.
Yeah, we completely forgot about firearms.
Yeah, I know. I was like, she just sucks at shooting things. Okay, we'll do 1 in stealth then. So I put the 2 in firearms.
Okay.
And then 1 more at 1?
1 more at 1.
I'm kind of leaning toward politics for the last one.
Yeah, that could be interesting, especially if she wants to eventually play that role. Yeah. Especially if she used to want to in the mortal world, and now she might have to learn kindred politics a little bit. It's just, it's a useful skill to have for someone who wants to enact a sense of justice.
Yeah, and with her father being a military man, she'll have heard, a lot of things, even if she shouldn't have her entire life, just about how the world works as far as law enforcement and politics go together. So,
yeah,
cool.
Okay, we got our attributes, we got our skills, so now we know what you're good at dice-wise and what you'll try to use in roles. So you'll want to put yourself in situations where you can use combinations of these to accomplish things rather than get in a bunch of situations where you have to be like talking to people and stuff like that. Finishing up your skills, you get a free specialty. Specialty is something that, it gives you examples of all the specialties in the book for each skill, but this is something when you're making a roll and it applies to your specialty, you just add a dot. So what's a specialty you want to have? If there's a certain type of martial arts she does, a certain athletic thing she does, sometimes so you can make something you're good at really good, or sometimes it's nice to have a specialty, something you're not so good at, so you at least get a die in there. So what are you thinking her specialty would be?
Maybe firearms?
Okay, so a certain type of weapon.
Yeah.
What do you think that weapon would be?
A handgun.
Okay, we'll say, I think they use like M9s. We'll say like an M9 is a certain pistol that you're very good with. I think that's a officer's pistol in the Army, if I remember right. Yeah, so we'll say that's your specialty. So now if you're shooting an M9, you get an extra dot as opposed to shooting any other type of weapon. You also get free specialties in academics, science, performance, craft, all of which you have none, so don't worry about it. But if you had dots in those, you would get specialties in those as well. Oh, and also there is a summary sheet in the book that in our version's on page 152. In other versions should be the same. It gives a really good rundown on, say, if someone is not me and they don't know the difference between composure and resolve. You look at that, it gives you nice little summaries of everything. That's good to have. All right, now we're going to turn Lane into a kindred, which is fancy talk for vampire. A good thing to figure out is the events surrounding your embrace. Everyone has their embrace story of how they were turned. Most traditionally usually will know who did it. They'll do it on purpose for a reason, and you'll have some sort of relationship with your sire, whether it's positive, they're your mentor, or negative, or they did this to ruin things and you might want revenge on them. Sometimes you might not know who your sire is. We have a whole campaign dealing with that, but traditionally you will know. So, and that also determines your clan and all sorts of stuff that you're thrown into. So, let's talk about how Lane was embraced, how she was turned.
So, like I mentioned before, she was doing a lot of training in mixed martial arts. And I kind of had this idea of her working out at this gym, every couple of nights, late at night, training with a group of several people that were there regularly as well, and being turned by one of the people that she was really close training with.
Okay, so this was another gym member. Why would they be at the gym? Why are they training there?
So,
do you think they were looking for potential recruits for something, or was it a personal thing?
Yeah, so some of the research I did on different groups
of
I know,
okay.
I read different group of kindred. I wanted somebody that would be looking for someone that was very physical, had a strong sense of doing something physically related.
Someone was looking for a soldier essentially to help out with their clan, their politics, something
soldier,
like that.
assassin, something along those lines where they have a fight drive, and who was
so they could drive a vehicle.
yes, that drive.
Yes.
So yeah, that's what I kind of started thinking about, and I was looking, for a type of kindred that was very motivated in that sense. So then I came across the gangrel.
Okay, we're jumping the gun. I was going to ask what your clan was, but you're telling me, and that's fine. So she knows her sire.
Yeah.
Before she was kindred and whatnot, her sire knew her, and she was chosen for a reason, and she probably still has a relationship with her then.
Yeah.
Since the sire chose her for a purpose to do something, the sire's obviously not just going to abandon her.
Yeah.
And the sire was a gangrel, and gangrel are the more animalistic, they're more connected with nature, and they used to be, well, they're still sort of, they're definitely one of the more physical clans. So, yeah, let's get into the gangrel side of things, why you chose gangrel and what that means.
It's been a hot minute since I was reading about this. So, I was looking for a group of kindred that were more physical fighters, sometimes used as assassins or messengers for other kindred. They didn't necessarily have an allegiance to one type, kind of like mercenaries almost.
Yeah, I feel like gangrel are very useful, but are often not the ones doing the using.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and if you want to be cynical, you can kind of think about law enforcement in that way. So it's kind of an interesting parallel. And yeah, so I wanted something that would make her just as physical as she wanted to be in real life. So there would be this pull of, losing her old life and then getting something that also had a very dark, repercussion to it. So yeah, that's kind of.
So how did she take to being turned? Is she just gone for it? This is her life now and she still has that drive of, I could still accomplish some things when accomplished, just in this different society, or does she hate the fact that she was embraced? What are her feelings? And they could have changed. A lot of games you've probably been a kindred for a few years or something, so maybe she had this initial thought. Where's she at now?
I think she's probably a little bit of a control freak, so the fact that this was taken away from her, ruins this life that she cultivated. She spent a lot of hard work and hard, effort getting to this point, but she's also a realist, and she can only wallow for so long before she, decides to buck up and do what she can with it, and this is her life, and she's not going to waste it. So I think there's a period of like mourning for her, but she's also not one to just sit there and be sad about things. She can't change it, so she might as well use it.
Okay, yeah, that's a good take. That's interesting. All right, and then our clan determines what some of the disciplines we could start off with. I don't think it's... Some people just find the powers they want first and then find the clan that works for that. You did a thing that I think is a little better, is you mix it a little bit, where some of these disciplines will work with what your character wants to accomplish, but also the ideals of the clan played a part in it. And while the book has they tell you they give you really interesting stereotypes or different versions of different people in the clan, but really you could play it's you could play any clan however you want. Not everyone fits nicely into their clan's ideals, and in this game, anyone can learn any discipline eventually. You can drink from someone with these powers if you want the powers. So if you want to play a gangrel with blood sorcery, that's absolutely a thing. You could even do that at creation with your predator type. So we have our clan, and the clan does determine your clan bane and clan compulsion. That you can't really get around. But really, just pick your character first, and then sometimes it's interesting to say, oh, the character I made would make a really interesting Nosferatu, or they fit perfectly with the Ventrue. But sometimes it's also fun to be like, oh, this would make a terrible Ventrue. Let's figure out why a Ventrue turned them and them struggling with that. But also work with your storyteller to figure out how big clan politics play a part. Sometimes that will determine a lot of stuff on what you're able to do in the game and who you're able to interact with. Other times it's mostly just up to you. So let's get into our disciplines then. Okay, so disciplines are what a lot of players get most excited about. These are your vampire powers, all the crazy cool stuff you can do. They're pretty strong early on. So even with level 1 stuff, especially against mortals, you as a vampire definitely going to stand out. You can do things where a lot of mortals don't even get saves or resistances to. It just happens because you're a vampire and you can do it. Again, so their vampires are not super strong early on, but obviously you build up to that. And you mostly want to be manipulating mortals anyway. So we're going to have your 3 from Gangrel. And so one of these is going to be 2 dots. Another one's going to be at 1 dot. The other one you're not going to start with, unless you want to through other means, which we'll get to. And also each dot represents a power you have. So there might be 2 level 1 disciplines. And if you have 2 dots in something, you could have 2 level 1s. Or you could have 1 level 1, 1 level 2. So just think of each dot as each discipline. So what's our discipline we're going to have 2 dots in? What are those 2 powers going to be?
I think I'm going to go with Fortitude.
Okay.
Just based on, why the Gangrel Kindred would have picked her, her personality traits already.
And that can help make up for some of the stamina, too. When you don't have terrible stamina, you could definitely use more if you're going to be getting in the scraps. Okay, so you have to level 1 powers available for Fortitude are Resilience and Unswayable Mind. One adds to your health, one helps you resist attempts to sway your mind.
I think I'm gonna go with Unswayable Mind.
Yeah, and that could help for that's a weakness of hers, so it's helped makes up for that a little bit. Is also she has a decent resolve, so I can see her being hard to manipulate herself, even though.
And I think based on her career path before, that would be something that she would actually have concerns about, being manipulated, by people higher up.
Yeah, and she seems pretty stubborn too, so it even makes sense that that's manifested in a supernatural way. She's Unswayable Mind. And then you can take Resilience for your other power, or this level 2 power is available. Enduring Beast, which you can use with Animalism, which you have access to, or Toughness, which reduces damage you take.
What is an endurable beast? Is that what you said?
So if you choose to blood bond an animal to you, it'll share some of that supernatural toughness, some of that fortitude. So your animals that you blood bond or have used your familius thing with animalism would have additional health. So it's choice between if you want to have an animal to play a significant part, that definitely makes them more viable, or if you want you yourself to be a little tougher.
I think for now I'll have to go with toughness.
Okay.
Having a stronger animal would be a future goal, but I think
Yeah, it'd be something she could seek out and find. But I mean, toughness is always a safe bet. You'll get to shrug off a little bit of damage you take. And then, so we'll have 1 dot in animalism or protean.
I think I'm gonna have to go with protean.
Protean. That'll help make you a bruiser for sure.
I think also it would be something like one part of who she is that she would have an issue with. Be a little more monstrous. It'd be a little bit harder to wrap her head around that, but also it'd be a huge help to her. So it'd give her a little bit of a tug both ways.
Yeah, I think it'd be really interesting. So level 1 protean, you can have Eyes of the Beast, which essentially gives you like night vision, which is something that a lot of times you assume vampires can see in the dark, but they can't unless you have this power. Or Weight of the Feather, which makes you almost weightless, messes with your bones to where you can jump from higher distances, like impact things that would normally hurt you, won't hurt you as much.
Oh, that one. Those are both really good.
One is definitely cooler than the other. I'll let you decide. I will tell you if you're wrong or not.
Oh. Okay, I'll go with Weight of a Feather.
You want night vision?
Well, I thought that's the one you were telling me to
No,
go for.
night vision's the best.
Okay, that's the one I was going to go with, but I felt
I mean, Weight of the
like you were
Feather's
throwing your
cool
weight around.
if you're dramatically jumping from things all the time.
I feel like, because her stealth isn't great, but I think, like, night vision's more useful, but I thought maybe you were trying to pressure me.
No. I mean, if you're playing like Batman and jumping from things, yes, Weight of the Feather's great. Or if you plan on getting hit by cars and stuff, sure. But, I mean, night vision. And you do a thing, you turn the lights off, but you could still see, they can't see.
So a big inspiration for Lane was Clarice from Silence of the Lambs. And there's that, like, night vision part, and it, like, makes me so ill when I'm watching it. So this is really perfect. Like, I can defeat that fear.
You made the right decision. Normally, let your players choose, but if you're better than them, you can help them along with decisions such as this.
So let me do your eyeliner next time then.
Okay, let's All right, next we're going to do your predator type, which also determines discipline you can have. And this is one of my favorite parts about 5th edition, is it makes feeding something that's really part of your character, something that determines what type of kindred they are, what type of hunter they are. Because everyone has to get blood, so you have to sort of define that. Where before, instead of just getting blood as gathering resources for your powers, this really builds into their personality and whatnot. And some of them are really interesting and a little messed up, but that's what the game's about. This also will determine some flaws and advantages and stuff you get as well. So, how does Lane get her blood?
I think I'm going to go with Farmer. It's more animalistic, and I think it helps her conscience a lot.
Yeah, makes sense for a gangrel for sure. And then, yeah, if you're trying to be... If you had this idea of protecting people all this time, it'd be hard to suddenly start feeding from them. So it's a way around that. It's more difficult, but again, she has really good determination and self-discipline. Mm-hmm. If anyone could resist feeding from mortals, I could see her being one. All right, so Farmer is going to give us... you get a dot in Animal Ken or Survival. Animal Ken's kind of like animal handling from the D&D aspects. You're good at dealing with... Your specialty would be a type of animal. Or survival hunting would be your specialty.
I think I'll still go with survival.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a skill you would have learned in the military's nature survival. So yeah, so you will have you'll write a specialty, which is hunting and survival. So you don't have any dots in survival, do you?
No, I just put one in.
Okay, so, but when you roll, and if it's to hunt, you still are adding a dice to that. So specialty just means you add a dice to whatever it is.
Okay.
What else we get? All right, so we get a dot of animalism or protean, which both already fall in your clan disciplines, which is nice because that means it's cheaper to get more in them.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is, do you want another dot in protean or do you want your first dot in animalism?
I think I'm going to go with protean. Again, like another thing that would be a little hard for her to come to terms with, but also help her a lot.
This sort of fits in with your specialist thing too. You're picking things that you want to be really good at rather than spreading yourself too thin.
Yeah.
The level 2 power, there's only one to choose from. It's feral weapons, which is like what you think of when you think of protean anyway. You got night vision now. You got sweet claws.
Super tough.
You're a gangrel.
Unswayable mind.
Yeah. Okay, so you also get a dot of humanity, which typically you start at humanity 7 for most games. So if we were doing that, you'd be starting at humanity 8, which is good. It makes it easier to like blush of life, pretend to be human and stuff like that.
You can stay up a little bit longer, get up a little bit earlier.
Yeah. There's a lot of benefits of having good humanity. Then you're also going to get, one of your flaws will be vegan. It's a 2-dot flaw, which means you have to spend willpower to feed from anything not an animal. So now we know your clan, what you can do, and how you get your blood.
2-dot flaw, you said?
Yep. All right, next we have your advantages, backgrounds, flaws, all that stuff. You get 5 for the good stuff, and
Did you say 7 or 5 earlier?
7.
7, okay.
2 dots you have to spend for your flaws. A good thing to do here is just determine, everyone's got to determine the resources. So we usually start with that, determines how much money you have or lack thereof. So how many resources do you want her to have? Or that could be a flaw that you don't have any.
I went with 2.
Okay.
So she's middle class. Her family had, decent money, and she's not really living off of them, but, she has help, so.
Making ends meet. And does she have a job? Does she have an income?
She would be training for, potentially FBI or whatever federal agency you want to go with. So she would be, on the payroll but not doing anything crazy yet.
Okay. And you have a mask you're picking as well? So with the dot and mask, you can have a fake identity to get you through some of those checks and stuff. It probably wouldn't pass like an FBI background check, but you're working your way up to find some sort of equivalent, and you still want the training, the skills.
Yeah, and even with that, my intention wouldn't be for her to continue in that same area. Maybe, go into the private sector, something a little more seedy, less likely to be checked up on.
Be like a PI with your own identity.
Yeah.
What else were you thinking?
So, did you say 7 or 5 earlier?
7.
7, okay. And then I want to have that relationship with my sire, so I put 2 dots in Mala.
2 dots in Mala. Yeah, the dots will determine essentially how old that vampire is. 2 dots would definitely be above your age. I believe that's an Ancilla. Okay, so you want your sire to still be around and still be useful to you.
Yeah. I mean, because especially since it was very intentional, it was very, plotted for this change to happen, it wouldn't really make sense for him not to be around.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it would be good for the character development.
Okay.
And then I put my last 2 dots in an ally. Kind of in the backstory, I was working on at the academy. She would have had a really close friend who kind of cracked under pressure. Had a family that was probably pretty high up in politics or in a federal sector of law enforcement, and he cracked while he was at the academy and is kind of in a bad place. So having this kind of new purpose would be an interesting turn for him, and also he has some connections that would be interesting to flesh out. So yeah, 2 in an ally.
And then getting into those connections, your flaw you took is you took a status flaw, so a -2 in status, which is shunned, which means one sect is gonna refuse to work with you and just have a problem with you. And you want that sect to be the Camarilla?
Yeah.
Okay, which makes sense. So you're going to be an anarch through and through, which is interesting too, because you're about justice and law, but you're an anarch. But anarchs aren't necessarily anarchs in the true sense of the word. They just don't want to be ruled by the Camarilla, or at least that's probably what you and your sire have decided. So you're a big problem for the Camarilla, and maybe you have with that contact. You said you wanted them to be part of maybe the government or maybe something that was involved with First Light or any of these P government types that work against Kindred. So it's could be risky for you, but also useful.
Yeah. And if he's like, an actual ally, helps me get information without me having to necessarily dip my toes into it yet. So I think that's an interesting way to sneak around.
Yeah. And then, so I like when it comes to stuff like this. So you can still get allies and get more money or stuff like that through roleplay, and you're encouraged to do so. But by getting it in character creation, I like to think of it as having a little bit of plot armor. Like you spent experience, or character creation experience on having an ally. The storyteller shouldn't just take that away from you or have him secretly turn on you for no reason. Like you wanted that to be part of your character. Or if you acquired a new ally, maybe through whatever means, there's always a chance that something could go wrong just for story reasons. So these things I like to think of as protected a little bit by plot armor, although you could still risk them, and you could still, by making bad decisions, lose allies, lose stuff like that. But I think it's good to have a chance to stop that, to save them.
Yeah.
There's also lore sheet stuff you can take, which definitely is storyteller dependent. Those are specific things connected to characters or settings in the Vampire the Masquerade lore. I think they're really interesting, but you definitely have to check to make sure they work with the chronicle your storyteller is running first. Okay, so now we have our character. They're dead, they're dangerous, we got some drama ready. Once you have your character, you can work with your storyteller to make them. A lot of times people make them with the rest of your players, so you could build your coterie together. There's different ways to do it. We could cover that in other videos, but for now, this is how to build one vamp. If there's stuff that we didn't cover well enough, or I covered well enough, but she was confusing for some reason, or things you just want deeper dives into, just let us know. We want to really dig into everything there is to dig into without taking 12 hours in one video to do so. Otherwise, I think that wraps it up for this. So again, I'm Bully, here at TableGoth, telling stories.
I'm Mandy, being manipulated by them.
As a good storyteller should do. And yeah, this was us creating a character for 5th edition Vampire the Masquerade. Bye. I'm even doing the glasses adjustment without my glasses on. Oh, this is me now. Oh, thank God. For some reason I thought we weren't recording.
I would have lost my shit.
It's a constant fear of mine.
Yeah.
And just because I haven't
I feel like I have
looked,
nightmares about it.
oh
sometimes.
my God, I was choked on my heart for a second. Because for some reason I saw this, again, not wearing my glasses. So I was like, no.